Virtual machines are used to create what many consider to be a safe environment for working outside of the host operating system. However, they can create a false sense of security. Often, virtual machines contain vulnerabilities which can leave a user's data available for nefarious or forensic purposes. Specialized virtual machines exist, which are intended to mitigate these issues, but even they have some flaws which can allow for security vulnerability. With these caveats in mind, we examine the extent to which the combination of Qubes and Wonix improves user anonymity and privacy. We use as a control a Tor browser installed normally on a Windows machine. The same methodology used by a study we wish to replicate, which found this control method to leave behind a plethora of sensitive Tor-related data, such as artifacts within the RAM. To what extent, then, can Qubes and Wonix reduce the amount of sensitive data left behind? The answer to this question can inform why history cast doubt on the internet ever being able to provide privacy and anonymity for a prolonged amount of time.
I'll be going over the background and the work-related things for Qubes. First, I'd like to talk about the creator of the Qubes. Her name is Jona Rodkowaska. She's a computer security researcher from Poland. She is best known for her work on low-level security and stealth malware. She became famous in the security community after representing an attack against versatile kernel defense mechanism and using a technique called Blue Pill, which used hardware virtualization to switch a running OS into a virtual machine at the Black Hat briefing conference. She continued to concentrate on low-level defense in the years after that. She demonstrated in 2007 that some form of hardware-based memory acquisition, for example, FireWire, are inefficient and can be compromised. In 2009, she proposed an assault against Intel Trusted Acquisition Technology and Intel System Management and was successfully able to bring them down. After that, in 2007, at Poland, she founded a lab called Visible Things. The firm specialized in OS and VM protection analysis and offered a range of consulting services. She coined the world even made attack in 2009, describing a technique for gaining access to encrypted data on disk by compromising the firmware with an external USB flash drive. She basically found many easy ways to hack different operating systems, and it led her to create her own. Thus, Qubes 1.0 was completed and released on September 3, 2012. It was made available for everyone to download. Furthermore, she compared Qube to other well-known operating systems and other techniques, and I would like to go over them. So Qubes versus VM. VM run as a regular process and or kernel modules within a normal operating system, unlike Windows. This means they rely on OS provider services for anything from networking to USB stack to graphic output and keyboard and mouse input, implying that they can only be stable as the hosting OS. It is game over for all the VMs if the hosting OS is corrupted, and it can easily be corrupted by having a flaw in the DHCP client or a USB driver. Further, she compared it with the Google Chrome. So the Chrome OS is not a general purpose operating system. It is based on Linux, which comes with all of its security flaws that comes with using a monolithic kernel, as mentioned in the previous comparison. Basically, all the network and the USB stack in the kernel will have a possibility to be corrupted. And since it is not a standard general proposed operating system, Chrome is able to escape many of its issues that comes with desktop computing, such as the need for specific protection domain, internal domain file sharing, etc. And she also compared it with other military-graded certified secure OSs. Uh, you might have heard of Green Hills, LinuxWorks, or other companies that create military-grade, formally tested, 100% credible operating system. They appear to don't have any technical documentation for those systems out for us to view, and you can't get a trial copy of it either. So Jonah said, "Do not expect me to take seriously a secure product that isn't available for a broader audience to touch and play with." Thank you very much. Furthermore, it uses Tor browser as a standalone installation within Windows. Does it really have a reason to be optimistic about Tor? And if Tor leaves behind that much evidence as a standard installation, how much improvement can really be made?
In order to see if we could expand upon the potential power of the Tor network to promote the anonymity and privacy of everyday users, we decided to experiment with a combination of Whonix and Qubes OS. Primarily, we found that Whonix was more relevant to our aims, and Qubes was rather complicated, but both have their merits, and we will get into that. So let's start by talking about Whonix. So essentially, when you look at the original paper we studied and how all that the researcher was using was a standalone Tor browser within Windows, well, it's obvious that when we look at Whonix, Whonix offers a huge advantage in privacy and anonymity, such that those things are possible. And it does this because it consists of two virtual machine images, gateway and workstation. The user launches the gateway connects to Tor. Then the user launches the workstation, and the workstation connects to the gateway, and everything you do on the workstation, everything the user does on the workstation, which is relatively full-featured, gets routed through Tor. Therefore, the user has the ability to route more types of traffic through the Tor network. That is obviously a clear advantage. But we don't want to pretend like Qubes doesn't add anything to the mix, because although its role is more minor, it is nonetheless important. Qubes is famous for its compartmentalization. It is called Qubes because of this compartmentalization. It groups and runs applications in different virtual machines based on trust level. So non-trusted websites, files, and so on are interacted with in a certain, quote, untrusted, unquote, VM, also called a cube. And trusted entities are interacted with in an entirely different VM or cube. This obviously has substantial benefits in terms of containing the spread of malware if an infection is to occur, and in general keeping data safe from prying eyes. So yes, it could be looked at as promoting anonymity and privacy to an extent. But the biggest question is, how much can either really do in terms of promoting the aforementioned two values? When we look at the history of the internet, we often don't hear that in its very earliest forms, its purpose was to foster communication with spies abroad and play a counterinsurgency role during the Cold War era. So surveillance is baked into its DNA. Given these beginnings and given how much time has passed since then, is it truly realistic to think anyone can be anonymous and private on the internet? And if the answer is of course not, is there a point to using Whonix and Qubes or such a partial mitigation strategy at all? We believe there is for some people, but we want to express far more skepticism than the author of the original paper. We do not pretend to have found some sort of privacy panacea. Our setup turned out to be promising for a certain demographic, which is privacy advocates who wish to minimize their exposure. But we definitely want people to understand that the combination of something like Whonix and Qubes should be understood for what it is: a partial mitigation, not a solution, and partial mitigation is a euphemism here. You just never know for sure. So with that in mind, let's dive into the technical details of a Whonix and Qubes installation and what we discovered forensically regarding privacy and anonymity.
While some information from the reference study has some relevance to our research, much of it, the specifics, are not actually applicable. However, there are analogs, such as the registry in Windows can be considered similar to the log files. Even though they don't serve the same purpose, they do exist as similar artifacts that existed in both the referenced research and ours. The reason that there is no analog to the registry, which stores program keys and the like in program data, is that the Tor browser is installed in a method similar to Windows portable apps, which store all of their data in a single directory. So if that directory is deleted, then all of the data of Tor browser is removed. That is specifically how the Tor browser is installed in Unix and Linux systems in general. However, even though Unix does not log when the Tor browser is launched, merely using Unix is evidence enough of Tor usage. Unix's entire point is to access the Tor network. So even if you were to properly delete the Tor browser directory, while artifacts that we mentioned later can be removed by deleting the Tor browser directory, it does not absolve one of using the Tor network, which in some countries is enough to be considered criminal. In reference to the log files, both the Unix workstation log file and the systemd journal shows references to both the Unix gateway and the workstation being installed, run, stopped, and uninstalled. These logs persist even after uninstalling all Unix-related packages and virtual machines, which means that even though it seems like you've removed those things, there's still evidence of you using Unix. Of course, since Qubes uses full disk encryption by default, a live forensic acquisition has to take place. However, if that does take place, then evidence of Tor usage can be procured. To prevent these artifacts from existing, setting either the volatile storage option in the journal configuration or setting no storage will solve it. By setting it to volatile, it stays in RAM, but it makes it to where if somehow you shut down and a forensic acquisition happens, after that point in time, there will be no evidence of you having used Unix in previous sessions. Setting it to none means that even if a live forensic acquisition takes place, there isn't evidence of Unix usage. As for the Tor browser itself, add-ons, bookmarks, and downloads are stored unencrypted in the portable Tor browser folder in the Unix workstation virtual machine. The Tor browser inherits a master password feature from Firefox, which it is based off of. However, that does not encrypt any of the aforementioned data. It doesn't protect the aforementioned data, it only encrypts passwords. For this reason, a live Unix system, or a forensic image of a decrypted Unix system is acquired, all of the Tor browser data will be there, even if the Tor browser was not in use. Additionally, Qube's virtual machine files are not encrypted aside from the full disk encryption for the whole disk, meaning that a disk image of a running Qube system will contain all of the unencrypted Unix disk images, meaning that the lack of encryption on the Tor browser shows that anything that you downloaded over Tor is free for anyone to see. Even after deleting both types of Unix virtual machines via the Qubes Manager and Package Manager interfaces, both regular and disposable virtual machine disk images are not repeatedly overwritten to prevent forensic analysis. In addition, disposable virtual machines, while it seems like they would prevent forensic analysis, actually write their temporary files to disk, meaning that it is possible to recover that data even after it has been deleted. The Qubes developers recommend overwriting this data repeatedly to prevent forensic analysis. However, this is not default behavior and cannot be done via any GUI interface, which is not very user-friendly. Another mitigation that is coming are encrypted virtual machines that the Qubes developers have been working on for some time. However, it doesn't exist in any existing public version. Additionally, even with encrypted virtual machines, there's still many memory artifacts which could potentially reveal other information. However, similar to the reference study on Windows, there is no cache or history leaks of the browser on disk, which means that at least browser history is relatively safe, assuming one does not bookmark every page they visit. Memory artifacts were explored extensively in the reference paper through a memory dump, and they also likely exist on Qubes as well. However, because Qubes uses a multi-tiered virtual machine system with barriers put in place between them, it makes it quite difficult to analyze the virtual machine memory, and for that reason we didn't analyze them. While the specifics were not covered, based on the architecture of Qubes itself, it is still vulnerable to known attacks on Linux systems in general, specifically cold boot or frozen RAM attacks, where the memory is frozen and then removed from one system and placed in another system for a memory dump, can attain memory artifacts such as LUKS encryption keys, or even running memory of a Tor browser process, even if the computer is locked. To mitigate this, standard Linux systems can use the Tresor patch to use debug registers to hold the encryption key, because it is substantially more difficult to read registers on a locked computer than it is to read RAM, since it is removable. However, we did not investigate whether Qubes was compatible with this patch or not, and if it had any effect at all. There's been some discussion of using AMD Secure Encrypted Virtualization or Secure Memory Encryption, which would completely prevent any encryption key from being found via this technique. However, it hasn't been implemented as of yet.
Hi, my name is Jonathan Ho, and I would like to conclude this presentation by emphasizing that there is currently no perfect system for securing complete user anonymity. The main problems with the software that we have discussed so far is that every one of them has flaws which leak the user's information in some way. And considering that some of these software systems are built upon one another, there will always be a tangible forensics trail that can be followed. For example, Tor does not encrypt downloads or hide user bookmarks, and even allows the user to install third-party browser add-ons that are not guaranteed to be secure. Tor leaves these traces of user activity on the Unix system, which does not even automatically delete it after shutdown, and the lack of encryption on the host Qube system means that all of this information is accessible by forensic search. Also, with each extra security measure in such a complicated system comes at the cost of performance and user-friendliness, which makes the software inaccessible to most people. It is far more realistic to view software such as Unix and Tor as ways to make the user information harder to access rather than outright impossible. It is also generally unrealistic to assume that any perfect system will exist in the near future, because forensics methods and secure systems are in a constant, never-ending race for advancement. More importantly, it is easy to forget that we, the users, are the ultimate weak point in any secure system. The false sense of security that we get from sophisticated security software often leads us to leave all kinds of important information in our computers, such as passwords, finances, and sensitive personal information. We can keep ourselves secure by simply being more vigilant over what information we store in digital format. Thank you for your time.